Brian is?
See the guy in the back?
Yeah. Why don't you go get the microphone for him?
Hey, Paul.
Hey, Paul. All right, just hold on to that one. I'm going to turn these things off while I'm speaking to our panelists. And I'll take that one when I ask for it. You're going to use that one to go around the audience in case somebody has questions. Okay. Okay, welcome everybody. How are you doing? Good, man. Paul and Ron, you have participated in this before, so you know the drill. Elizabeth, Trenton, welcome. Thank you very much for participating. I always explain this is just a conversation, a guided conversation, and I'm the guide. I'll give you prompts and questions and other points for you to discuss, but feel free to suggest your own and get in anytime. Just let me know you're going to speak. Try not to step on each other too much. Sure. Or hog the microphone. Okay, you should each have your own mic, and I recommend that you use it and use my hand and use the stand, but it's a lot easier to hold it up to your mouth rather than reach in and do like that.
So if you want to speak,
Yeah, just give me an eyes on it. Yeah. I'll be sitting right there.
I'll wait you down.
And I'm mostly in the too, so I have issues.
Yes. I think that's fine.
Getting around.
Yeah.
So, we each have an agenda of sorts. Those are kind of the questions or the points that we address as we move along. I didn't identify any of you for any specific things, but you get the idea, and you're all welcome to address any of those questions.
Okay.
Okay? Publisher, president of European Publishing.
Vice President and Executive Editor.
Vice President, Executive Editor.
Radio director.
Radio Director.
Mine are.
AI Content Engineer.
Yes.
You're probably going to be best addressing things about
Where they going?
print, publishing,
My daughter. I would say business and media. Yeah.
and any media, obviously radio, media, and photography mostly, but also newspapers, publishing, any of that kind. And Trent, AI as it applies to media and publishing.
Yeah.
Looks like there's a lot of data right now. Based on my experience. Yeah, if I see an opportunity to add something.
What we're trying to do this evening is give our audience some advice and insight into current contemporary media, how to make sense of it, how you make sense of it. What sources can you trust? Which ones can you use? How can they discern and separate the slop from the real? In all kinds of media, whether it's print, images, sound, and video.
We're friends.
Any questions? Nope. We're gonna go to 8:30. Probably try to end it as close as we can for that.
Is there going to be a Q&A at the end, or we're just going right through?
Hmm?
Is there going to be an audience Q&A?
Audience is welcome to ask questions anytime they want.
Good.
Okay? It's
Yeah.
open. When they raise their hands, I'll say, you got a question? Try to ask them to keep it to questions and not comments.
Yeah, man.
Grandstanding stuff.
Been there, pal.
Yeah. But it's hard to wrangle a crowd, as you all know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we're ready to go. We're ready to go. Good evening. Happy New Year. Welcome to Tulare County Voices at 210. My name is Paul Hurley. I'm a moderator for Tulare County Voices at 210. moderator for Tulare County Voices at 210, which is a monthly forum dedicated to addressing local issues of concern to our community. We welcome audience participation and input. So if you have questions, raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone to you and allow you to ask those questions or to make a comment or join the conversation. But use the microphones, please. And the reason is because this is live streamed, and it will be streamed on YouTube. They won't hear you if you try to speak without the microphones. Okay? Right now, I am going to take a seat because I have some mobility issues. So if you hold on to that for a sec. Let me back up. When I come close to something that is stationary like that, let me know, and I'll stop. Okay. Right off the bat, I'd like to introduce the Tulare County Voices at 210 planning team. Where are they, actually? We'll start in the back with Donna Kinshu at the door. Raise your hand. Yeah, you're over in the dark there. They can almost see you. Moving forward, Lou Griswold, longtime newspaper man here in the Valley. Continuing to move forward, Miley Melkonian, who is just an interested citizen and of the world, really, because she has been all over the planet checking things out. And Catherine Doe is right in the front, who is the editor and publisher of the Valley Voice newspaper. And Bill Osak is hiding, as he usually is, which is unusual because it's hard to hide someone who's that large. Hi, Bill. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us. I'm very grateful to these folks for the work they put in to prepare these forums, to discuss the issues and decide what we want to do every month, and to contact and cultivate the people that we want to invite to help us work through these issues, the ones who are on the stage behind me. Tulare County Voices at 210 is jointly sponsored by the Visalia Times Delta, a newspaper, or maybe used to be, I don't know, yeah. A news source. It employs one of the people who's sitting behind me, in fact. Used to employ me. The Valley Voice newspaper, kind of a news source. And most importantly, First Presbyterian Church, which owns this building and this space. We are very grateful to First Presbyterian for allowing us to use this space for free every month. It is a great contribution to what we do and to this community. It really is a treasure, and I hope that you all understand that and appreciate them. Our topic tonight is fact or fiction, sifting through the news in the digital age. And helping us to do that are the people on the stage behind me. Elizabeth Arakelian is the, probably should start with the first one. Paul Myers is, would you say vice president? And I'll never get his title right. Mineral King Publishing, but you mostly know him as the editor of the Sun Gazette newspaper, which is a newspaper, by the way. Reggie's gonna correct me too. No? Yeah? Never mind. We got to it. Elizabeth Arakelian is the radio director for KVPR, Valley Public Radio in Fresno. Trenton Lively is artificial intelligence content engineer. I'm going to find out a little bit more about what that means. And Ron Holman, one of my old comrade in arms, is the photographer for the Visalia Times Delta Tulare Advanced Register, and an employee of USA Today Company, or is it corporation? Company.com. I know, things change so fast, you never know. I'm going to start off. Did we get them all? Okay. This article appeared in the New York Times a few days ago, and I am going to synopsize it a bit to get us started, about kind of like what we're talking about. Headline is, Disinformation in Minneapolis Shooting Points to People Who Were Not Involved. Has everybody heard about that shooting in Minneapolis? Okay, that helps. Here's the lead. Within hours of a federal officer shooting and killing a 37-year-old Minneapolis woman on Wednesday, some social media users identified two separate and unrelated people as the shooter, a move that for hours sent threats and vitriol their way. The story and the authorities did not identify the federal immigration and customs officer who was enforcement officer who was involved in that shooting. But his name, by the name I think it was Steve Rhodes? Ross? Steve Ross, he was identified as Steve Ross, not officially at all, but within hours, his name was out on the internet, and social media users had identified him as the shooter. At least this information was viewed by at least 6,000 people within an hour or so, online on X. And it went on after that, of course, to be viewed probably many more, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of times. There was a gentleman in the city of Minneapolis whose name is Steve Ross. He happens to be the editor and publisher of the Minneapolis Tribune newspaper. He's not the shooter. There is another Steve Ross who lives in Columbia, Missouri, who is a veteran and also I think he's a gun shop owner, in fact. He was not the shooter, and yet they were both identified as the shooter in this killing. As the lead of this story said, it sent threats and vitriol their way. You can imagine how their lives were affected in the days, hours and days after this. The New York Times article went on to explain this, a few more details, and a little bit of explanation from authorities and experts about why this occurred. And they asked the advice of Harry Farid, a professor of computer science at the University of California, Berkeley, and a co-founder of Get Real Security. And he said, let's keep this in mind this evening as we talk about this, quote, "The problem, of course, is everybody wants their news and information fast. But there's a fast accuracy trade-off. The faster you move, the more mistakes you make." Anything to that statement, Ron?
100% true.
How many percent?
Sorry, 100% true.
Have you noticed any difference in demands for information, the speed of information as opposed to, from now as opposed to previously?
You mean back from when you and I carved stone?
You did the carving. I just thought it up.
Yeah, you were there before me.
Yeah.
Yeah, the internet has been faster and faster. So it's a business, and we've discovered that the sooner you get the story out, the more attention your story gets, the more your ads get seen. So that all adds up. So there is definitely a push for immediacy. More so than before. Before, as again, you and I had, original experiences with deadlines that were once a day to make the press. And once we went into the internet world, that deadline sort of became 24/7.
All the time. Immediate. Paul, anything to add to that particular part about the demand for information?
Yeah, so in a lot of cases, especially at the national level, I feel like there's an expectation that if something happens, you should be able to look on your phone and get a piece of information right away. Because in this case, it doesn't sound like there was a journalistic institution that was involved in naming the officer. So what happens in these cases is that you get a bunch of people who are chronically online. They watch the video, they compare faces to, other folks in there, and then other folks in these communities, and then they kind of crowdsource the information from there. So the first few hits almost every time are inaccurate because one, it's not done by an institution of real journalists, and two, it's just way too fast to even know these things. And the videos oftentimes are not shot in 4K, where things are moving really fast. So it's really difficult to identify these folks. On a local level, this would definitely not fly in the Sun Gazette newsroom because you couldn't move that fast. My journalists couldn't move fast enough to do this with the level of accuracy that we demand out of our journalists, because I would rather it be right and late in quotes, than necessarily just have it out fast. Because honestly, the way that it works, like Ron said, a lot of people want to jump on a story, and if you're an institution that has ads on your website, well, you want to drive traffic to your website. And I was like, so if you put out something quick, more people see the ads, the more money you make. If you have very broad appeal. If you're a local news outlet like we are, I'm going to be honest with you, not making a ton of money off the ads because we don't have the reach that the internet requires in order to be monetized at a robust rate. So knowing that as a publisher, I don't necessarily care how fast we get information out. I want it to be timely. I want it to be within a news cycle, but it's not going to make me another dime if I put out information right now. So what's the reason why I would do it if not accuracy? And that's kind of my point on the local news front.
I chose this example because I figured it would be known to everybody. I mean, you've all heard about this incident. It's been recent. And I think we're all familiar with the speculation that has arisen over these events. Not just who the shooter was, but what was the justification for the incident and the reaction, et cetera. It's been a mess. It's really been very difficult. But that need for speed is really only one of the factors that's leading to a lot of the confusion that we're all feeling about information, isn't it? It's the story pointed out in this about this incident in the Times, by the way, that thousands of internet detectives, if you would, sleuths, were online, as Paul points out, sitting at their computers and trying to figure out the answer to the questions that were left unanswered, to get information about how this happened, who was involved, what was the cause, what was the result, et cetera, et cetera. Thousands of people who were trolling the internet and looking for information. So when that's occurring, how do we know what information to trust? Where do we go? We're going to get to those. That's just people about trying to find information and identify things. Once you get machines doing it too, which can do it a whole lot faster, it really gets complicated. But you know, AI is really only one of the need for speed. It's the internet and the number of people who are on it all the time, and it is I'm not going to say bad actors, but it's people who want to influence the news, and that is not new. That happened before the internet, that there were people who wanted to put their spin on events and make sure the story came out the way they wanted it. Paul?
Well, so there was, if you'll remember back in the 2020 election and all the events following after that about election fraud, things like that, we were seeing, and speaking of bad actors that are playing this particular crowdsourcing model of news, we had, what is the current president's account now pointing out two individuals that worked at a Georgia site, Ruby Freeman and her mom, who were just doing their work, and they had volunteered for years at the same precincts, and they had fabricated a video to make it appear as if they were stealing votes, so on and so forth. Those folks, so what happens in these cases is that people pick up what they see first, and then they run with it because there is, for some reason, this mob mentality online. There's like, well, what I see must be right. And what happened in the case with Ruby Freeman and her mom is that people were staked out, just regular old folks who were very upset about the election were staked out in front of their house for months, just augmenting their entire way of life for just having done their job. And that came from an institution in the United States, the highest institution in the United States. So like, these bad actors are highly powerful when you give them the opportunity if they want to do that. That's part of the problem that we have.
Trent?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. Are you guys familiar with the term going viral? So viral is, for better or for worse, pretty much the new currency of today. And so when you have, and a lot of bigger corporations and news outlets are using going viral as a marketing strategy. So when you get eyes on something, for better or for worse, you're getting eyes on it, right? And then you have media, social media influencers who are trying to do the same thing.
There's another county you heard from. Yep, social media influencers.
But at the local level here, going viral isn't necessarily as important, right? Like, we want to get news right, we want to have sources verified. But for outlets that have a larger audience, going viral is kind of what they're striving for now. They want to get eyes on, and so a lot of times that will sacrifice the reliability of the source or the information, because you can always, again, I'm not saying I agree with this. I think you should always source and fact check and have reliable information. But if you have that amount of people who are sharing and crowdsourcing and putting out information, whether it's right or wrong, you're getting eyes on it. And that is the currency of today, is how you can get, go viral.
Just in case anybody here doesn't know the answer to this, what's the benefit of that for having a piece of information go viral?
Well, they say like any news is good news, right? Any publicity is good publicity. You know what I mean? So it depends on the purposes of the person who is putting that content out there. Do they want to put content out there because they want to be seen as a reliable source of information for people to consume, or are they just trying to get eyeballs on them? Because if you get eyeballs on you, then the marketers and the sponsors start looking, and then they're like, well, we may or may not agree with what this influencer is saying, but they have a lot of followers, and so that means we can get our brand out there. And so this is kind of the new landscape that we're really going to have to contend with. Like, is going viral more important than actual facts, like Paul was talking about? Yeah,
well, that's kind of like where I was going to. It's, when it comes down to it, it's the bottom line here is the bottom line. It's money. Yeah. Right?
Can I add something to that?
I wish you would.
So I think zooming out a little bit, important context as well is the culture that we live in, which is this culture of sharing our lives, sharing this information. 30 years ago, before the advent of social media, your institutions, your journalistic institutions, were where you got that information, and also things like Page Six and gossip columns, People Magazine, we've always had an appetite for tantalizing information. But an example, so I think that's important too. An influx is because so many people want to share. We're all sharing our lives on social media, our families, graduation, everything, babies, marriages, funerals, you name it. And so it's not that surprising that misinformation gets put out there. And an example I always think of is during the Charlie Kirk assassination, there was an older gentleman who was filmed being arrested. And he was arrested for the crime, but he was mistakenly arrested. And before that information came out, everyone online was saying, oh my gosh, look at this video. Our adults have been radicalized, just like the youth. It was, a really big deal. And I saw that on X or Twitter, and I believed it because it was still an open case. I went back to it a day or two later. Turns out they arrested the wrong guy, who was then later rearrested for heinous crimes. So perhaps, there is some sort of poetic justice in that. But basically,
He was going to get his 15 minutes of fame one way or the other, huh?
But the narrative was that, older adults were being radicalized, and that wasn't true. It was like a teenager, an early 20-year-old, misguided person. So regardless, that person could have posted that video because they were at that event without nefarious intentions. They could have just simply been sharing. And I think that that's a big piece of this, is everyone is so eager to share, even if they're not monetized and making money. It's just that kind of fear of missing out and proof that I was there, and that urgency that I think a lot of people, especially, younger generations, kind of suffer from, that feeling of needing to prove that they participated and they witnessed and look what they've accomplished. And I think that's kind of the undercurrent in a lot of this.
Let me add one more thing that might be contributed to this that I want to get out there and see what you all think of it, as well as Catherine Doe. Not so long ago in the past, it used to be that if you had a piece of information, whether it was in media, legacy media, in a newspaper or a magazine, on television or radio, it needed to have a source who was identified, a person who was standing behind whatever that information was, whatever they said, whether it was might be an institution, it might be just a person. That standard, though, has been eroded to the point where a lot of times information is going out there that doesn't have any source, or has a source that's not identified, or is simply false. And that is being used. It makes it a lot easier to get information out to other people if you don't have to identify yourself as the source of that information. Any reaction to that idea?
So I'll react to that real quick, and then I think we have a question.
I'll get to
from
the
our
question.
friend
Don't
over-
worry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll get to the questions.
So my, the thing that I hear a lot from the right is, facts don't care about your feelings. I think they almost got it. Like, feelings really don't care about facts at all. Oh, sorry, you said my name too. I was like, now I'm scared. So that's my point. It's just like, we're getting out ahead of our skis a lot of the time, as our emotions tend to do, and then we put it online, and then we mask it as new, and then it's under the guise of news, and so then we think that we're being informed when really we're just having an emotional reaction, and then we're putting it out there as fact. And it's like, well, that's clearly not the case. That's not what's happening. But that's what happens on the internet, because there's an incentive structure to make sure that happens on the internet, because you actually make money that way. And the more reaction you get, the more emotional reactions you get, good or bad, is, as Trent said, going viral. And there's an incentive structure, and in order to do that, and as long as there's money behind that and there's investment behind that, we're going to keep seeing it.
Paul, I had
Okay.
to add to that, is that as far as journalists, I'm sure Paul and all you guys would agree, and Reggie, we don't report anything that's not sourced. When you're reading in a newspaper, it has a source. And sometimes they stay anonymous, but they are not anonymous to me. and they are not anonymous to Paul, and they're not anonymous to Elizabeth or Ron or Trent. We know who they are. They've asked for us not to use their name, but I tell them, I don't have to put your name, but I have to know you are who you say you are. Newspaper, any newspaper, even a small one like us or a bigger one like Sun Gazette or NPR, all of the information is sourced. We're not putting it out there. You know, it's the social media stuff that puts stuff, because they don't have a responsibility to their reader. They
Miley?
can put out whatever.
Mike is going to do the things tonight. Okay. I would say, however, that news sources use unidentified news outlets use unidentified sources more than they used to. I don't know, folks. Is that true?
The New York Times did it for a long time, and that's what cost. Oh, I'm sorry. The New York
Yeah.
Times did it for a long time, and then I think was it Margaret? What's her last? Sullivan had.
Margaret Sullivan, yeah,
was
she's.
the ombudsman for the New York Times.
I
and
think
she
it was the Washington Post, but go ahead.
Yeah. She was at the New York Times for a while, and then they started using anonymous sources often in stories, and I don't think she unceremoniously left, but I think she was kind of feeling the pressure.
We make it.
You see in the Times and other publications now all the time a source that is has not been identified because they were not they were not given permission or whatever by their bosses to comment on the issue.
Yeah, Paul.
So they're okay. The reporter does, but the reader doesn't. That's the point. Well, it's okay, but it's creating a climate of media being able to use to dispense information without identifying the source.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah, go ahead.
Our company makes it difficult to use sources that are not named.
It
And
does.
it's done
Yep.
intentionally because it's not a good thing. It's done when it's absolutely necessary, and only when those contributions further the story in a way that it can't be done otherwise.
Anybody here think that unidentified sources are being used more now than they were, say, 30 years ago, 40 years ago?
Yeah, because of the internet, because you can Google everybody, and it's dangerous.
Oh, well, yeah, okay.
That's what Abe Lincoln said.
Any questions at this point? Who?
Yeah, I had a question just on definitions, and I've heard Elizabeth talk about this, and I know she has a good answer for it. The gradations of information, misinformation, where a sincere reporter just gets it wrong, or disinformation, where it's weaponized as a tool for a devious purpose, and all the gradations in between, like gossip and bias and so on.
Anybody else? Question right now? Go ahead. What? Elizabeth, did you have a response?
Sure, I'll just
Go ahead.
reiterate that. In a research for a presentation I did at the League of Women Voters, I myself learned a lot about the differences between misinformation and disinformation. And it's worth noting that misinformation isn't consciously done to mislead you. It can be an accident, whereas disinformation is intentionally distributed with the intent of misleading people. And believe it or not, yes, like foreign governments do utilize things like X and Facebook to interfere in our elections and to sow, distrust among voters and things like that. So it can go to the highest levels, but it can also be, smaller scale as well. And we, part of your training as a journalist, hopefully, is, it's a very ethical job in the sense that you are conveying information that people have given you, and the onus is on you to convey it accurately. So people online, and I just want to say this, and Trent might be able to talk to this more, but this may be basic and everyone knows this, but I want to reiterate, videos on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, these are monetized for people with an audience. So that's why people who do not have journalistic training can make a lot of money saying information and don't really care whether that information is accurate or not. So I think that is a big piece of this. We're talking about legacy media and institutions who train their journalists and have editors, and we're taking, we don't want to take, not advantage or take for granted, rather, the fact that we all want to tell the truth. There is a big part of the population that the truth is irrelevant to what they're trying to do. So I just want to say that when we talk about virality and online things, that is separate from trained media. And a lot of people can't tell the difference these days.
Actually, Elizabeth, I have a quick question for you. So would you say what influencers are doing would fall under a disinformation because there's a neglect for the truth because they know that it serves their audience, or misinformation? Like, how would you, which side of the fence would you put that on?
I think it's case by case, because I think some people do intentionally craft video titles and headlines to, I mean, I've clicked on them myself thinking, oh my gosh, that happened. And it's like, well, not really. It's kind of, exactly, clickbait. So that's conscious disinformation. And there's a lot of other folks out there just regurgitating stuff, because think about it. We all consume things in different ways. Some of us get all our information on Apple News, and maybe we look at, Facebook. There's a whole side that only looks at TikTok or only watches CNN, and it's all the same information, but sometimes, hopefully, but like sometimes it's, changed based on the person conveying it. So, and a lot of those people are not journalists. So.
Maybe of the four people we have up there, maybe Trent, would you have the most familiarity with influencers and how that works?
I mean,
If you don't, I'll take a crack at it. But
familiarity with how it works. I'm personally, I'm not an influencer, but I have no. What I really think is going on here is there seems to be a generational gap on as far as like how different generations are consuming their content and getting their news, right? So, and this is not to say that social media inherently is not a bad thing, right? It can be used for lots of good things. It can be used to stay in contact with people all around the world, with your network, and also to follow brands you like. So, opinion-based things, like if somebody, like an influencer is posting something and you agree with their opinion and you like, their style, or you follow the kind of things that they're into, fine. That's okay. But when someone on social media is getting in there and talking about, like, pick your conspiracy theories, whatever one you want to pick, whether it's alt-right or far-left or whatever it is, and they really have no basis or kind of expertise except it's opinion-based. But when people are taking that as, this is how it is, this is fact, this is how I'm going to now, frame my thinking, then we run into a problem, right? And so there's really a challenge, I think, in the next 20 to 50 years, probably even sooner than that, as far as like how we are going to balance like the difference between misinformation and disinformation, because I think there is a lot of, we're all human, right? Any good journalist will make a mistake and they'll own up to it, and then they'll fact check it and say this is, this was inaccurate and this is actually the accurate one. But there is also an active campaign of disinformation happening for various reasons, and it's something that we're going to have to figure out as a society, as far as like how we want to deal with this and address these things.
question in the back, all the way, Mike, all the way back, all the way.
I have a tendency to be somewhat skeptical, and I was doing some research partly because of this, but I found that different browsers, and when you do the search on them, they give you 180-degree differences in the information that's provided. And then I don't know if it was NPR or PV or I'm not sure where I found it, but I guess a lot of news organizations are using Dogpile. Are you familiar with that? It's supposed to be a search engine that covers thousands of sources on a particular subject. And some of the news providers are now using that as a clearinghouse. I'm just wondering if you have any information. What are you using for a clearinghouse?
Well, let's take that observation and talk about what social media is reliable. Which social media outlets is reliable?
Can I just start by saying that's a really big bucket? It is.
So you don't
It's a
you
very-
you
very-
can't answer it at all?
It's a very generic label. There is a lot of things on social media, from very good to very bad, and a lot in between. So I don't think you can label social media as good, bad. I think you have to be smart enough to wade into it and be discerning about what you see.
So there are some social media sources that you will use. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so which ones will you use and which ones won't you?
So as a micro view into that idea, I'm on Facebook. A, because I have friends in other places I like to keep track of, and B, because employer requires it. So there are elements within Facebook, people I am friends with, that I hold in high regard, and some I do not. So you can take that entire scenario and expand it, a millionfold, and that's kind of where we're at. There are people that, or organizations that you trust, and those that you don't. Or maybe you just disagree with them. So everybody to their own, as far as what you trust and what you don't. But I think everybody should at least give some critical thought to those that they trust.
Okay. Trenton? If you'd please wait for a microphone.
Thanks. Just to expand on that then, when you're doing a story, what, again, to the gentleman's comment in the back, what browser, if any, would you use? I mean, obviously you want face-to-face, first of all, but beyond that, aren't you researching? And if so, what browser, what search mechanism are you using when you do a story? And that is for everybody, not just you.
Not to escape your question, I'm a photographer, not a writer.
It's okay.
But-
It's okay, Ron. I got you.
But it's a good question, and I think I will tell you that by far we prefer, like you said, to have one-on-one interactions with sources. And as a local newspaper, I'm guessing you guys have the same idea. If it's a story that probably relates to a more national trend, then yeah, I'm sure the writers are going to use whatever browser they prefer. But I don't think that the browser is really the issue. Hopefully you're doing research that's deep enough and long enough that you're going to find that no matter what browser you're using, and you need to do that to the extent that you feel comfortable with what you have found through that browser. The browser is really a tool. It's not the end result. Does that help?
Paul?
Yeah, so the browser, so whichever browser you use as an individual, like a lot of people use Google, there's a whole suite of tools. The reason why Google knows so much about you is because they're tracking where you're going at every place that you stop. A different browser will also track you, but if you don't use it as often, it doesn't have as great of a profile of you. So the browser really isn't the question here. The question, what's at question here is how do we follow up on the information we get from social media? And the way that you're supposed to do it, or at least the way that we do it, is if you find a story via social media, it's incumbent upon the journalist to reach out to the person who posted it via direct message or maybe an open post to try to get to make sure that that is a person. And you're saying like, okay, this isn't some bot account, this isn't some fake account just trying to like stir up trouble in communities. And once you can get in contact with that person and you can set up a phone call or an interview and all of those things and vet this thing out, well then now we know that it's legitimate information, right? So it's no different than meeting somebody out on the street or like kind of tracking them down through like a friend system or something like that before there was social media. That's all very legitimate. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Where people get in trouble is whenever they just start taking that information as gospel and they don't consider the source, right? So like the problem with social media whenever people are trying to get their news or their information is that everything looks the same. Like you will have World War III in the same phone width as you will have puppies and watermelon. And you're just like, these things don't belong together, and no righteous journalist would put them on the same front page. She'd build, like Danielle Gutierrez, our editor, she builds the front page. What's above the fold is appropriately above the fold without anything else interfering. But the algorithms that you get as an individual would say like, well, we want to make sure that you keep scrolling. So we're going to give you this story. And then we know that after you get that story, you want this other story to make you feel good. And then you're going to scroll to the next story, and then it's going to serve you that. And so that way you're, you know, for lack of another word, addicted to the platform. But that's how journalists should be using it, as a starting point, not an end-all be-all.
Others? Wait. I just want to make sure our panels had everything they want to say about it.
Just to add to that, you know, to go back to what I was saying before, like these technologies aren't inherent, like social media is not inherently bad or inherently good, right? It's how we use them. So just like an easy example, you're asking how can we rely on, or like what sources in social media can we trust? So let's say there's a local story that happens, right? And I'm sure there's a lot of local influencers that post about things that happen in Tulare County or the Central Valley. But you know, if you follow the Visalia Times Delta page or you follow the Sun Gazette page, and you're able to verify that, that's one way that you can say, okay, so this is the Visalia Times Delta, this is a source that I trust, this is the Sun Gazette, this is an account that I trust, and they're posting this story. So that's one way to verify it, right? Following sources with, you know, good reputations that you can verify, whether, you know, whatever it may be, rather than, you know, account that's really not subject to the same guidelines, and they don't have to get those same sources, right? So following trusted, verified accounts is a good way to, you know, interact with social media and also have that kind of peace of mind that you're getting reliable information.
Does that help, ma'am? Somebody had a question? Oh, go ahead.
I think back to your question back there, there are search engines that will kind of label like if this has a left-leaning bias or a right-leaning bias, or if it's more center, and then by using those, you can kind of build some trends in your mind about, you know, which information is the most trustworthy. Ground News is one of those. I think there's another one. Do you remember the other? Ground?
That's a search engine?
Yes.
It's not so much a search engine as much as it's just like a curated.
Yeah,
It's a curated version of stories that like are prominent within the day, and then it'll give it a ranking of like this is more right leaning, this is more center leaning, or center, and then this is more left leaning, and like it'll give you the different headlines.
But it's a good way to kind of see, like, if you really want to know, like, I don't know, does this organization have a bias on the national level? It is kind of a good starting point to get used to the idea of like finding patterns about the things you want to know. So just hopefully that helps a little bit.
Any others? Yeah. Yes.
We all have received emails from companies that are really not the companies. They're bad actors. Is the same thing true with, say, a CNN on internet? Can they fake that? Are there bad actors saying they're CNN when they're not? Are there bad actors they're saying they're the Washington Post and they're not?
Anybody want to address the subject of imposters?
So what you're describing was the original version of fake news. This was like back in 2015 and 2016 when there were folks out of Eastern Bloc countries who would make money creating sites that looked a lot like ABC 30 or something like that, because the logos are very easy to replicate. And then, honest to God, it would catch me every now and then. I was like, that doesn't sound right at all. But the point is, as Trent said, go viral and look legitimate. So like, yes, that can happen. There's been advances in the technology since then in tracking these places and where they come from. So like spam filters have gotten quite a bit more aggressive in taking emails from places, from VPNs and other IP addresses that it doesn't recognize. So yes, it can happen. The prevalence of it is less than it was 10 years ago, but it used to be way worse.
I believe also, and Trent might be able to weigh in on this, but in recent years, Facebook has actually, a lot of people who use Facebook not only follow their friends, they'll follow news sites as well. And it's one big feed, so you're seeing posts. Well, Facebook has deprioritized news because of some of these issues from the 2016 and 2020 election. So now there's less incentive for media organizations to try to get you on get you, so to speak, but get your attention on Facebook. Not to say that we don't participate and it's important, but I think because of a lot of those bad actors, it became very confusing for everyday people and what was real or not.
Yeah, and you know, I would just say trust your gut. Like if it feels like it might be a little fishy, a little scammy, look into it. Do a search online, and I guarantee somebody online posted about it. So if a lot of times it'll even finish your sentence before you type it out. Like, is this a scam? And it'll say, is this a scam? You're like, oh wow, I didn't even finish typing it. So if that's the case, then it probably someone has done it. And so again, this is where there's a good part and a bad part, right? So if it doesn't pass the smell test, do a search. And somebody will have posted about it, and that information will be out there to protect you.
Thank you. I've heard several references to monetizing stories, and in my mind that translates into getting paid for the story. How does that mechanism work? How does that happen?
Anybody want to?
Stories aren't playwrighted.
Anybody want to explain that? All right, go ahead, Paul.
So Paul could probably talk more about the journalistic aspect of it, but I know from, let's say, like an influencer social media part. So I was talking about going viral before, right? And so companies, corporations will look at that if their brand is hashtagged, and then they see this account, and then they see how many views this certain video got and how many followers the person has. They then might reach out and say, hey, would you like to be an affiliated marketer? And so what that means is they will pay that influencer to post videos and content highlighting their brand. And that's how it would work from an influencer standpoint. And that's really, again, for better or for worse, kind of where the media landscape is trending towards today.
Or use their product or service.
Yeah.
An influencer. The corporation will come to the influencer and say, we'll pay you $10,000 a month if you will wear our sweaters.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that as well. Like if you're a YouTube creator, if you look at how many subscribers someone has, they can have hundreds of thousands of subscribers and all they do is break down pop culture news, let's say. YouTube, once you have a certain following and subscribers and views, YouTube pays you because YouTube wants people driven to their platform. So all of a sudden you went from posting your thoughts on pop culture online to now it's your full-time job because your employer is YouTube in a way. And then you can have companies reach out and say, hey, you have a great following on YouTube. Will you wear our sweaters? We'll also pay you to do that. So that's, and one last thing I wanted to say was from the business perspective, you know, back in the day, if you wanted to sell Nike shoes, you would maybe get a famous person to do a television ad. Now imagine you had a $500,000 budget for this one famous person to promote your shoes on TV. Well, nowadays, these influencers who have a following online, it's so diverse that you're not just gonna get people who consume TV at 8 o'clock at night to see the ad. You can get every demographic on every platform by taking your $500,000 and giving it to 10,000 influencers or however many you want. But it's a way to our attention. If you feel like things are competing for your attention, it's because they are. It's no longer the nightly news with the big Nike ad or the Coca-Cola ad. It's now everybody online all the time, and these companies can spend the same amount, reach more people, and because of this is a big piece of it. So, and more reach, yes.
Yeah, more specific reach.
Exactly, and that's to what Paul was saying earlier. You know, whenever you get that pop-up on the web where it says, oh, can we,
use these cookies or whatever. We want to give you more targeted ads. We want to help you. That's how it's pitched to you. But what they're doing is they're cultivating a personality. I'm a woman in my mid-30s. I like to shop here. I like to buy this. And all of a sudden, these ads I'm getting are targeted to a person my age, my gender, and even my location in Central California. So a lot of this is, I think a lot of the marketing and the businesses have kind of cannibalized the news space, but that's a big piece of it. And I think understanding how social media has been monetized is a really important part of this conversation because it has affected the news industry tremendously.
Yeah,
Remember, advertising is always gone with the news industry.
So I'll round this out for the journalistic perspective. You might be kind of noticing, it's like, well, that sounds fine if all you're doing is breaking down pop culture references and whatever, right? Not so good whenever you're trying to put out real, difficult, well dug out, well researched facts, which don't get the same level of interest as a pop culture breakdown video, unless you decide to punch up the lead or change the headline or gather the audience that way. So, like Paul just said, and we've been saying it at the Sun Gazette and at Mineral King Publishing for the last 2 years, what we've discovered in journalism is that we exist in the same attention economy, which is what Elizabeth was saying, as Mr. Beast on, you guys want to know who that is, as the top YouTube influencer. So like, in order for us to get our message out, we're not just competing with the Visalia times Delta. I don't consider us competing, but we're not just competing with Visalia times Delta in a local market. We're competing with Netflix because you only have so many hours in a day to take in information, and so we have to make it available to you when you want it, how you want it, in order to get the greatest amount of return if we are going to make the most on ads. So like what Reggie and I have done is said, like, well, we aren't willing to give up the ethical side of our news in order to do that for you. We're just gonna do it the good old fashioned way by holding community events and having events such as this, or participating in events such as this, because we think that the information and making sure that it's accurate and right helps the community stay more grounded to reality, whereas all the rest of the attention economy is about a distraction, which I think has gotten us in a pretty drastically terrible place. Sorry, Ron, I saw you holding.
All right, we have.
Okay, I'm going to add to that just a little bit. So, for those of you old enough to remember newspapers before there were other options, and radio and TV, headline writing was a very specific skill. And if you compare headlines from before the internet to now, you'll see a couple of trends that are very, very distinct. Paul, remember this, he used to write headlines way more than I did ever. Headlines needed to be clear. Headlines could not be vague in the sense they could not be interpreted more than one way. I remember a dead fast rule of a headline could never be a question. How many of you have seen questions on all your feeds, right? Do you know why they do that? To get you to click. Before that, we already had your money. You paid for the paper or you were watching TV, whatever it was. That transaction was done. Now we have to get you to click.
We had a question back there that I'd like to get to before I'd like to move this on to something else, but question, please.
One of the things about this is so interesting because talking about the current events and how it's affecting everything right now, some of the stuff that has resurged in the last few years and the connection that I've made because of the networking technology part of it with a lot of veterans, a lot of this stuff, I remember being in 8th grade and I'd never heard the word Vietnam. That was 1963. By 1967, Vietnam was taking a friend of mine a month. And that's the word that is missing from this conversation, propaganda works. The money situations that took advantage of all of that used propaganda to the point to where the stuff I know and got shoved down my throat during that 2 years of Vietnam, propaganda works. And when money has an agenda, they will flood you with it. The conspiracy theories and the things that have all of a sudden taken on a life of its own that used to be over in the corner and very quiet, all of a sudden now looks like the New York Times is saying it when it's some guy in his garage.
Okay,
But,
thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Did you have a question?
Well, I mean...
Okay, you don't have a
Sorry.
question. Let's give it on to somebody who does have a question. Excuse me? Yeah, I know, but that's as far as we can go. We have somebody with a question.
I thought a lot of what we're discussing is influence that a lot of the platforms exert. And there's been a lot of discussion as to whether or not those platforms will ever be held accountable as newspapers have been in the past. And I guess it'd be interested to see what it might, with the panel, what it might take for that to take place.
So the quick answer is no, as long as, I think it's like Section 230 in a very particular piece of legislation, because social media isn't held to the standard of being a publisher. They're held to held to an entirely different alien type standard. Like what we publish in the Sun Gazette, you can come to the editor, you can come to our office and be like, what are you doing? Or I really like that, but you can't go to Facebook as a publisher. So Facebook doesn't take almost any accountability for what is posted on their platform, despite the fact that they offer the railing in order for it to occur, which is the reason why there is no accountability.
That's changing, though.
Yeah, I hope it does. Well, I mean, here's the other thing, too, is that as AI grows in prominence, the web will become a less and less popular place, because most people will start using AI to search the internet on their behalf as opposed to going to the internet itself. So there's a really difficult question that social media companies need to answer, which is what happens whenever there's a quote unquote no-click internet, because really what you're doing is you're just prompting an AI to search it for you, which means that nobody is seeing an ad. And the internet is built on ad revenue. So if nobody's seeing an ad, how are the people who are getting paid to write things for the internet going to be paid?
Good observation. Good observation.
What's going to happen? I mean, I think Trent was here to answer that, so I'm not going to step on his toes.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, you know what? I liken it to when the internet came on the scene in the I think early '90s, late '80s. Society was forced to adapt, right? I don't know if you remember when music sharing became widely available, when Napster, society once again was forced to adapt to this new innovative technology, and it's not going to be any different with AI. Again, I think a lot of times AI will get framed as something scary and something we got to look out for, and it's coming for our jobs, and there are aspects of that could be true, but it is also, I believe, a innovative technology, and I think we're just scratching the surface, and it's something that's here to stay. So society is going to adapt, how it has to, and there's no one who has their eye in the crystal ball or their hand on the dial and knows exactly what's going to happen and how it's going to look, but we do know for sure that it's going to adapt and it's going to change, and that we're going to be living with these technologies. So, what we are thinking of is social media and influencers now and traditional media outlets. Who knows how that's going to look in the next 20 to 50 years based on how fastly things have changed to this date. So that's where we're at.
Okay, before we get into AI, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but to finish up on this, can you each tell me, and with a short answer, what are the tells of unreliable media, unreliable information online? What are the tells, whether it's social media or legacy media? How do you know?
I would say from a visual aspect with AI, there's still visual cues, right? And a lot of it comes in like text. There'll be like weird squigglies or something like that. And a lot of times it'll be things that you don't even realize. So if you go to, let's say, Target and you're shopping for wallpaper or gift wrapping, most of that is now made by AI, right? Yeah, well, like, and so there's always little tells. A lot of times, like it'll, if it's a photo and there's like text in the back, the text might be a little squiggly, or there might be like ineligible or intelligible characters. So that's one way from a visual standpoint. I would say from a content standpoint, as far as like, editorials and journalism, sensationalism is a big one, right? What are the headlines? Are the headlines a question, like he was just saying? And is it, is the source case? Then it's most probably some type of AI content or disinformation or something to that likeness.
Other tells, Ron?
I know you add, this is pretty commonly known, but if you see, 6 fingers on a hand, it's
That's actually a big one. That's a big one.
and other, body distortions that don't seem to make sense. I will give you some parallels, I think, that might help. Not going to solve your problem, but maybe help you think about it. You've all heard of Photoshop by now, I would assume. So that came out decades ago. And you've probably all heard the phrase, that's been shopped or photoshopped when you looked at images. And there was a while where you could tell those two images were blended, or the background was changed, or a Pepsi can was removed. National Geographic got in trouble for moving a pyramid so it would fit on the cover. True story. Those are all unethical things to do in the news business. We have the same tools, but we don't use them that way. AI is a very similar tool. It is growing in its ability exponentially fast. It's going faster and it is capable of more things, video, for instance. So there's no simple solution. You have to pay attention to what you see. Like Trenton said, go with your gut, but double check.
Tells?
Pay attention to sourcing in stories. It's sort of my pet peeve when, like, someone won't give a comment, let's say, or they will give a comment. Very different to get a comment in person, at a press conference, on a phone call, by an email. I want to know how you got that comment. And sometimes you'll notice people will say, oh, XYZ did not respond to multiple calls for comment. That shows me you're doing your due diligence. I appreciate that as a news consumer. I also appreciate when you tell me that questions were answered by emails. It's much more of a prepared statement. They weren't put on the spot. So I say pay attention to sourcing and context. And that goes for context as well. We had a story recently where there's a very far right-wing council member who made a big statement at this press conference, but we had to add the context in that he has this opinion which has been found to be contradicted, or he was espousing some information as fact, which was not true. So we as a reporter did have to say, this council member feels XYZ, that is been disproven. So we're still covering the drama of the event, but we're providing additional context. So context and sourcing.
Tells, Paul?
Yeah, so the way that I like to, everything that everybody else said up here is 100% right. And, if you're reading something that doesn't appear professional, there's a good chance it's not. So, go with your gut is not necessarily a bad idea either. And then the rest of, what Elizabeth was saying up here is, that is all extremely good work from a diligent reporter who is doing the right thing. And so, if you read news long enough, you read institutions of news, AP, New York Times, Sun Gazette, Visalia Times Delta, plenty of others. And you're used to reading journalism from journalists with bylines, the rhythm of what a story should look like. If you start reading individual Facebook posts for your moral fiber and how you get your information about the day, you're way off track. Things are not going well for you in plenty of other places in your life. I promise you.
And this might be something that's a little lesser known, but it's a subject of hot debate in the writing community, is the use of M dashes. For whatever reason, AI loves to use M dashes rather than commas. And there's a lot of writers like, hey, I use M dashes. What are you talking about? But
I use a lot of M
yeah,
dashes.
I'm a fan of the M dash as well. I don't have a preference.
Settle down, class. Settle down.
See, that's what I'm talking about. This is but yeah, usually more often than not, and I'm sure it's actually my job to train AI, so it'll be probably different pretty soon here. But the use of if you're reading something and it has a lot of M dashes where there could be commas, that is a big tell.
Okay. Will you publish information that you've gotten from a source that you know is incorrect?
Do I only have one word to answer? No. Yeah, I was just like, what do you mean? Okay, that's what you asked that for.
Sun Gazette over here,
Hey, Paul, why did you have to think so long?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay. Another question back there?
On the topic of tells, excuse me, I was watching a YouTube that just, I was clicking on a lot of different things, and it looked interesting, and it looked like, a talking head, and it was on a topic I was interested in. But I realized that, number one, many of the words were being mispronounced. And the other thing I noticed was the body movement seemed to have a tick of moving forward in a certain rhythm. To me, that was a big tell that it was somehow AI. Mm-hmm. And so just keep alert for strange things like that.
I was asked why anybody would print information that's incorrect, that they knew is incorrect. We have elected office holders who say incorrect, unfactual information all the time. All the time. I can find you in today's paper. I can, at least a couple examples. And it's worse now than it used to be. Other question?
Paul, isn't that different though?
Other questions right now? We have a question there?
I have can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have a question about a couple of aspects of journalism. One of them has to do with context, and the other one has to do with media bias. And I think it was Gore Vidal that famously said that we live in the United States of amnesia, and that it's easy to propagandize the American people because they don't know anything about the past. And the question on that one would be, do you think all governments lie? As another journalist, I.F. Stone also famously said. And then on the issue of media bias, we're told by reporters that they're objective journalists, and that the learning institutions for journalism is unbiased, and so that they report the truth. And but with most of the corporate media, there's a built-in bias because of what you talked about before, advertising and so forth. And so the question there is, do you believe there's such a thing as objective journalism?
Thank you.
So when I talk to classes, I try to be honest, and it's like anytime that you're making a decision to cover one story and not another, there is a bias in that. You're making a decision. I think that the goal is that you're not being unethical, because you don't want journalists that have zero perspective, like, and people will say that that's what they want, but that's like a perspective from nowhere. It's like, so who are you writing for at some point, right? So whenever we say bias, I think most people are talking about egregious levels of bias, where it's like you're not even considering the other side's perspective, and other side or several sides perspective, or your situations and scenarios that impacted a particular situation. Like, I think that's a level of bias that we're trying to talk about. But whenever people talk about bias in newsrooms, they talk about it with such like black and white thinking, where it's like, no, like the best newsroom is the newsroom that has zero bias. And I was like, well, a newsroom with zero bias means that you have zero people. Like, that's not the way this works. So there is an acceptable level of bias that must exist in newsrooms. It's are you being fair and accurate when you're reporting? And I think that's what we're going for.
So how is artificial intelligence adding to the confusion? Ron? Is it? Well, or is it? Okay.
It's making it harder and harder and harder and harder for people to know what is real and what is not. And that cycle is going faster and faster and faster. Yeah, the technology improvement is, you could probably answer that better than I can, but the fact that it's harder and harder, that wheel, if you will, dynamo, whatever it is, there's more noise in our world than there has ever been. We've had noise in communication since smoke signals, but there are so many, many, many more signals now today than there ever were, in all sorts of platforms, no matter who it is. But because there are so many, I think AI is in there, and it is easier and it's faster for it to contribute more and more noise.
How does it work in your area of journalism, photography, news photography, news journalism,
It doesn't.
Photographic journalism? It doesn't?
It really doesn't. You know, as a photojournalist, we have the same tools that folks in AI have, I suppose. I don't do the things that you see in AI. I don't blend images. I don't remove items. I don't move pyramids. All of that is against a pretty high set of ethical standards that we subscribe to. And that's been the case for my entire career.
But others do. Others do.
In journalism?
Yeah.
I want to
No?
say not by any majority, no. I would say that's the minority, and I don't know that I would...
AI is not being used in photojournalism?
In what sense? That's again, kind of a broad term, but...
Have any of you taken any of those little tests that the Washington Post, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, other publications have provided online, asking you to identify AI-generated images or AI-changed images? Have any of you seen any of those?
Well, those images are out there, but are they being used by news publications? That's the difference.
Well, some of these are examples that have been used.
Okay, so
And they do things like
so then the question
they
is,
change
where did they come from? How did they get in? How did they get into, you know, the safeguarding of news? Because as in our newsroom, I'm guessing the Sun Gazette is very similar. You know who took the picture, at least you hope you do. And so that becomes a trust issue. If you're publishing images you don't know where they came from, that's on you.
Yeah, okay, granted, but that happens. There are news outlets that are doing that online, anyway.
So then we back to how do you define news outlet? I'm just saying. Not everybody, not nobody. It's a lot of in-betweens.
Okay. Well, there are people out there who will accept as a news outlet anything they can find online that will give them information. That's free. And they'll trust that. Is that? You saying I'm wrong? Because that happens.
So I think you might be referring to AI slop. Is that what you're referring to?
Ooh, explain what that is.
So AI slop is exact. That's the term. I didn't make that up. That's the term being used. And that's what if you're on any social media platform, Facebook, Instagram, or newspaper, you will see what the term AI slop, which is AI generated imagery.
Slop,
Yeah.
S-L-O-P.
SLOP slop. Yeah. Oh, sorry. AI
SLOP.
Yeah.
AI slop. Pretty
SLOP,
common term right
yeah.
now.
It's a term. Again, I didn't coin this right.
Yeah, he didn't make it up.
Term
It's
being used.
been out there for a little bit.
But yeah, there is a lot of that flooding algorithms today, and it's getting. And actually, so I work as a QA lead for Meta with their AI model, quality assurance. And so my job is to actually make AI less detectable. so it's good. So a lot of these tells we were talking about earlier, I would in the next.
Thank you, Trey.
In the soon future, in the not too distant future, these tells probably aren't going to be there anymore. So because they're really training these models to be undetectable from human expertise. And that's the thing, right? That's where this innovative technology is changing the game, because whereas you guys all had to go to college, you had to learn a craft, it took you years to build the expertise in it, right? AI now gives anybody who can type in a prompt or they want something, they give them that ability to have that within minutes or within seconds. So that's where it's really changing the game, right? Instead of having to go to school for decades or go to college and get these diplomas and get these certificates, you will no longer need that. So there's a drawback and there's a benefit to that, right? Productivity can go up, but how are we sourcing our information? How are we getting reliable information? And this is also another movement that has come up. I don't know if you guys are on YouTube or anything like that, but you'll see a lot of like AI generated backgrounds and things like that. But there's also a new movement or a new want for human craftsmanship, right? No AI backgrounds, actual real backgrounds where people act in actually, real places, or someone who is crafting something by hand or doing something that they know how to do, by hand. So there's actually an emerging market for that as well. So as you see AI, AI, all that stuff rising and coming up, you're also seeing a craving for human craftsmanship and no AI backgrounds and actual real backgrounds. So that's where the balance is. So I think, we're still early on in this, and we'll see where it goes. But I'm an optimist.
What?
And I'm happy to be paid by Meta.
Yeah, I mean, I agree a lot with what Trent was saying. I think that I'm pretty bullish on AI for its capabilities in shortcutting creation of things that we already do on a regular basis. So, I mean, there's plenty of AI opportunities that newsrooms already use to help craft headlines or to help craft social media posts, things like that. I think that's fine as long as it goes through an editor, because once it goes through a human hands, I mean, like, that human's responsible for it, right? I mean, like, if it comes out of the newsroom's responsible for it, whether AI created it or not. In terms of where we're going with AI, Trent's right. I mean, it's here to stay. This is going to outlive me, more likely. It's going to get way more advanced, and the tells that you see now are rapidly being picked up. So what's the problem with that? Well, then we're starting to realize that this is what happens when you're completely untethered to reality if you're just looking at life through your phone, which you're already pretty much untethered from because you're looking at life through your phone. I was like, but once you can't tell whether the videos are made by a person or whether there were even people in it, I think that there's a lot of leeway in entertainment. You'll probably never meet the movie stars in your favorite movies. And so whether they're real or not is, you know, inconsequential to you other than how you feel about it. But for news, yeah, you're going to want to know that somebody actually said that or that somebody actually reported on those things. So there is going to be a want, I imagine, for knowing what reality is. And you're going to have to, and so like, how do we get there? Well, there's going to need to be some investment from the people consuming the information. Right now, and the way that we have been the way the information comes to be is that it's supported by ads. And so advertising revenue pays for the folks who actually make the content, and then you guys get it for free, and then we sell you ads that, you know, you probably don't want, but you keep on watching them anyways. And it's like, so when there's no more ads, and because nobody's looking at the ads, it's going to come down to the people who want the information the most and are willing to pay for it, because that's the only way it's going to be created.
Let me share part of a conversation I had with my financial planner just last week, who pointed out that AI, for most of the gains in the market last year and is continuing to be a huge driver of the markets, that is, markets you invest in, New York State Stock Exchange, et cetera. Because companies are putting huge amounts of money into artificial intelligence. They're building data centers. They're buying land for those data centers. They are coming up with new strategies for using artificial intelligence, and they're improving their companies by saving money on labor by using artificial intelligence to do the jobs that humans used to do. They're doing that now, and it's accelerating. And this is why my financial planner told me that at least up to 25 to 35% of labor costs in the most successful companies out there that you want to invest in, because they'll make money, they're saving that amount by using AI instead of humans to do jobs. Amazon, think Amazon, okay? Now, is that going to happen in the news business? Is it happening in the news business? I'll prompt you by reminding you about how many people used to be employed in the newsrooms that we all work for. Okay, here's my question. What are the benefits to using AI?
Okay, so I think that as more people can't rely on what they're seeing on their phone because they can't tell whether it's real people or not, there will be a greater drive towards stronger communities, as long as there is a network in place to actually help with the information ecosystem of getting people together. And I think that AI will help local news in that way. And I don't think that AI helps in news necessarily all that much in the production side of things, because there's no AI that's going to interview the mayor. You actually have to be there. You actually have to pick up the phone. There's like AI may be able to help you read through a 140,000 page document and help you draw out the key points, but you got to know what that means. So like you want the humans going out into your community as trained journalists and reporters, getting information, putting it in context, and bringing it to you, probably for a fee, so that way we can pay ourselves in order to keep doing it. And AI isn't going to replace journalists because, and honestly, AI needs journalists, because AI has come to a point now where it has crawled everything on the internet. It has an ingestion problem. At some point, if fewer people go to the internet and fewer people are writing on the internet, what is AI giving you? Because it's not drawing from an internet that doesn't have anything on it. So it's going to need information sources from somewhere. And humans go and get information and produce it for other humans. Whether there's an AI intermediary in there or not, doesn't really matter. The fundamental equation stays the same.
Other observations about that panel?
I think it's just real quick worth noting a lot of newsrooms do have AI policies that you can look up on their website if you're curious if a certain outlet is using artificial intelligence. And I did want to comment on one quick thing, which is, the more optimistic side of me remembers that, information will continue to be shared. I do think Paul makes a good point about community. I mean, ever since someone drew like hieroglyphics on a cave, that was a form of telling stories and sharing information. We had the typewriter, we had the computer. Like, this is a natural evolution. But I think the thing that is sort of scary is it's new to all of us. And of course, like, we grew up seeing movie stars and admiring them and wanting to see them and knowing that they were real and wanting to emulate them. But think of the next generation who maybe they watch AI characters on the screen. And to Paul's point of like, we'll probably not meet the movie stars. Like, we know that, but we still want to believe that they're real, and we still want to, kind of idolize them. Where I think this is going to get interesting is where the next generation comes up and has a really different relationship to the phone, to the screen, the phone. General.
Yeah, and just to add to that real quick, I mean, AI should never supplant good journalism and good writing, but what it can do is help productivity, right? So in the case, let's say you're interviewing somebody on the phone and you want a transcription, you're recording the call. Instead of looking through that, you can just plug it into the AI prompt and say, I need 3 good quotes from this, and AI will give it to you, So that cuts your time down by, half hour, 45 minutes. So it increases. So that's why I'm saying it's a tool to be used. We are still figuring out how exactly we want to use it.
And can I say one more thing? I think also we talked about the images, but also, AI using words, we convey things in different ways depending on our mood and who we're talking to and the way we type. Like, for instance, in radio, there's a lot of us who have print backgrounds, and we have to have it like beat out of us that people don't speak to each other the way they write. It needs to be, your script for air needs to be written in a way that's interesting to listen to. Well, interestingly, in our newsroom, we did have a situation where multiple people Googled the same answer. And if you use Google, you might see sometimes there's an AI summary at the top to give you your quick access to the answer that it intuits that you're asking. We got different answers. One person, Google told me no, and Google told my colleague yes. So, and it was like, did Germany annex Austria was the question. And what it told me, no, it didn't annex Austria. The other told my colleague, yes, it did. And then you get into the World War II language, that we had typed it differently. We asked the question in the way that we would ask it. And so I do think, that's where everyday people are seeing AI being used. We're using Google Chrome. We're not so much using it in these advanced ways that I think it could, like for transcription services and stuff, like everyday people aren't. So I do think as it learns our language, I would be curious, and Trent might be able to speak to this, but I would be curious even in 6 months from now to a year to 2 years to see it become more refined, because I think a lot of those, the AI slop or the hallucinations where, that's the kind of stuff that it's going to need to continue to learn from us. And when we ask things in different ways, it's going to get closer to the answer.
Let us know. Hallucination.
I'm sorry?
Hallucination. Could you define that again for us?
Yeah. Do you want to take that one?
Oh, so an AI hallucination refers to when the user types in a certain prompt, maybe lacking certain specificity, and the AI will kind of give you something maybe irrelevant to the prompt, or like an image that doesn't make sense at all, or like, it's like a dream. You're like, well, this isn't what I asked for at all. A good thing kind of a good example would be like, okay, let's say you have a picture of a farmhouse out in the country, and you prompt AI, you say, please add a middle-aged couple in this photo and have the man holding a pitchfork, right? And so one image generates will have a middle-aged couple, and then I've actually seen this. The other is a same sex couple, 2 men, right? But you didn't say I want a straight couple or a heterosexual couple. So that's AI kind of hallucinating what you might have meant.
Got biased.
Yeah, and so like, right, who am I to be biased, right? So it is interesting in that aspect.
Ron?
But I will say we are quite a ways away from general AI intelligence taking everything over, right? There's still needs to be a human input. There's a very large need for human input, and like she was speaking to, who's giving voice to AI, right? Like, how are we training it? What data sets are we using? How are we making this technology accessible for everybody? And so when OpenAI came out with ChatGPT and they made it accessible for everybody, that was really a groundbreaking move, right? You know, that they did that, and I hope it continues to be that, and that these technologies continue to be accessible for all demographics.
Yeah, that was only what, 5 years, 6 years ago?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't even 10. Ron, benefits of artificial intelligence. I know it's very difficult in photojournalism, a whole different kind of thing, but
I had to really think, and so far I've really
sifting through dozens of images, for instance, to find out.
I'm hoping that it results in finding better images for the uses that it's called upon for. Some of those images I would hope might be mine, but other than that, I'm a provider in that sense, in the very generic sense, and so my head, my eyes, my brain behind the camera are what generates the image or decides when to take that image, and I don't see that being replaced by AI, and at least not in my lifetime. So
I didn't say replaced. I said, how could you use it?
right, how can I use it, or
How can photojournalists use it? You think? Any benefits at all? No. Okay, I'll tell you.
See,
I
I'm
will.
not searching for images though. I'm providing images to our.
Oh, okay.
So.
Huh?
It's probably going to be the reverse. It's going to be using your images.
What does? Photoshop does? No. Oh yeah, I know. And so does a camera does too, with automatic focus or with choosing an image out of a stream of video.
I don't consider Photoshop to be artificial intelligence. It's not doing things I don't tell it to do.
Well, you can have a debate about that.
You could, absolutely.
I will tell you though. I just want to share when I was told this by a colleague of mine and worked for a company that we both are very familiar with, and pointed out to me how he used AI recently for newspapers and their online format. He said, I had to write an article about, it might have been something about travel or food or something, but he had a real tight deadline, 15 minutes. And he had to produce a 250-word story about this subject. He plugged the essential elements into a prompt. I think it was probably ChatGPT, as well as seeking a photo to go along with the story. He had the completed story in 15 minutes, ready to ship. It happens. It is happening. Not necessarily. The information was accurate. It was from sources that he could rely on because they were, it was in the company that he works for. But it streamlined, it accelerated the process of going through maybe dozens, maybe hundreds of pieces of information to collect a story that would eventually be published. Any other questions? Really? All right, we got a few here.
You had is it on? Yeah. You had a comment earlier about the shooting in Minneapolis. Everybody goes to their own corner, and you asked what are the tells. If you you're being manipulated, if they're trying to find an emotional trigger, something that'll make you write a check, get mad and resend the message, send an email to your group of friends, and so the tell is, am I being manipulated? And it seems like we need to teach young people a healthy skepticism to evaluate what they're viewing.
That's healthy for anything, probably, but go ahead.
I'm going to confess, I already don't trust anything I see on the internet. The other day, I had Cat TV for my, I chose a Cat TV channel for my cats to entertain them. And darned if there wasn't a bird in the frame with a squirrel's tail. And it kept morphing between a squirrel and a bird. The other birds didn't seem to mind.
So that would be that's a great example of a hallucination right there.
Cat
That would be a hallucination.
Feline propaganda.
I had a question over there. Was that the best example you could come up with? I don't know. It's
Trent, I want to ask you, as a former copywriter, I want to know if AI could churn out 3 different creative headlines on something, and would it be different, or would you have to, present? What would you have to present?
Could AI churn out 3 different creative headlines? Was that the question?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now, would they be usable? Would they be? I mean, would they be in the voice that you wanted it to?
Yeah.
Maybe not at the first go, but if you keep prompting,
3 different concepts.
if you keep prompting and say, I want it more this way, I would like it more that way. Keep it shorter, make it a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Maybe learn to spell too. I can tell sometimes AI is not spelled correctly.
over on the other side, Mike, over on the other side of the room. It's always the person with a question.
Get that hand up.
This is a rule that the person with the question is always on the diametrical side of the opposite side of the room.
Paul, a quick question. Yeah. Based on what you were talking about with respect to journalism, do you see the demand for more journalism classes being taught, or the emergence of a greater need for journalists in some of the better colleges that are reputable journalistic colleges?
That's a good question. So, I mean, there are journalism courses certainly occurring right now all across the country, right? I think in the in the near to medium term, they struggle to place their journalism graduates into jobs that would pay off their student loans or things like that. So, I mean, so there isn't quite a great demand because there isn't quite a great
financial
institution.
Incentive.
What?
You mean financial incentive?
Yeah. So there isn't really a great incentive to be in journalism the way that we're talking about, and I think that, I mean, financially, it's not like, because there isn't a lot of ladders either in there, unless you're, I mean, like NPR is one of the few.
Well, I argue that media literacy should be taught in English class. I mean, I remember bringing the newspaper to class and having to talk about the article. So I think that's going to become very commonplace with the advent of AI, especially of not just what's real or fake, but using these skills, using your judgment. I think that's going to be taught in schools, especially since children are so online.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, because there's a lot of ways this could go. You know, Reggie and I talk a lot about how journalism should be treated as a trade, and like as like a trade school. Like, this is what you would go to, same way that you would want to be certificated as an electrician or a plumber or some of these things. Because whenever you're going to college, there's a lot that you're learning. There's a lot being thrown at you, and I think that as long as there's communities, and a lot of them throughout the United States, willing to pay for the information that they're taking in instead of just looking for the free option, I think that we'll probably see more and more institutions popping up, or at least rebuilding to create more journalists. But I think the money's going to have to be there at some point.
I think our population needs to treat journalists better than they have been lately as well.
And not to get too far into the weeds here, but that also opens up another debate is how are we going to incorporate AI into the classroom, right? How is this going to be integrated into the academic system? Because again, this technology is here to stay. You know, calculators were seen as cheating at one point, and now they're on everybody's phone. Cell phones had to be let into the classroom at some point. So it's gonna be no different with AI, and so it'll be interesting to see how we integrate this.
I am nodding at that comment as I look toward my son, who's standing in the back of the room, who teaches mathematics at the State University of New York, and had a a seminar this morning on use of AI in the classroom by both instructors and students. So you're right. It's coming. It's part of our lives in all aspects of it. So we need to learn to deal with it. This has been a wonderful evening, hasn't it not? Let's give a big round of applause to our panelists. Paul Myers, Elizabeth Arakelian, Trenton, I forgot, Trenton Lively, and Ron Holman. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, very much for joining us this evening. Give them another round of applause. What the heck? Thank you all for being here. 210, Tulare County Voices at 210 will convene again. Second Tuesday of next month, I think that's February 8th. It's Farm Show Week, right? And our subject will be housing in Tulare County. Do we have enough? Is it serving us? And how do we manage it? We hope that you'll be here and that you have a wonderful month until then. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Paul.
Quick question for you.
Yeah.
Why is ChatGPT so nice?
Oh, it's like a life coach, right?
It literally is.
It's never pushing back.
No.